Today's Take 5 with the Saints, February the 4th, is Archbishop Anskar of Hamburg, a 9th century man who might not be a common household name for saints we might think of in the modern church today, but whose work in missionary and evangelism work to the Scandinavian world of the 9th century, i.e. in the middle of the Viking conquest of most of Western Europe at the time, was a point in history in which the church was able to meet up and ultimately penetrate into new frontiers thanks to the faithful and dedicated work of a man whose humility and energy were second to none in his day. Our scripture that is one of the ones for his feast day is out of Zephaniah chapter 3, verses 9 through 12. At that time I will change the speech of the peoples to a pure speech, that all of them may call on the name of the Lord and serve him with one accord. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my suppliants, my scattered ones shall bring my offering. On that day you shall not be put to shame because of all the deeds by which you have rebelled against me. For then I will remove from your midst your proudly exultant ones, and you shall no longer be haughty in my holy mountain. For I will leave in the midst of you a people humble and lowly. They shall seek refuge in the name of the Lord. Anskar, whose Latinized name was Ansgarius, was born around the year 801 in the northern part of France, and he rose up very quickly as a young man to become a cleric, and in fact became a papal legate to the Scandinavian people, which really was more of a wishful thinking position at that point, as the gospel had really not gotten beyond or to the north, that is, of the Germanic countries of that time. It is just starting to get into Denmark, but really had very little impasse into Denmark. But as a young man and consecrated as the bishop of Hamburg in 831, around the age of 30, but even before that, he was sent as a missionary and invited by the King of Denmark in the year 826 to begin establishing missionaries in that country. Well, again, this was wishful thinking, because during the years of his work in Denmark, he established a total of 2 churches and a school during that time. But Anskar was also constantly having a vision in which he was hearing the words, quote, "Go and return to me crowned with martyrdom." So despite the fact that ultimately, being the Archbishop of Hamburg, he had this very cushy position in a fairly well-established Christian area of that time, his peers and his colleagues thought him crazy to want to continue to go into this barbaric frontiers. Again, the Vikings were pillaging and going all sorts of places around the British Isles, Ireland, and along all the northern coasts of Europe, and basically doing whatever they wanted to do at that point. So not just for why would you want to go into these places, but why are you risking your life? And again, in his time, he was able to also go and establish a little bit of a presence in Sweden. In fact, he consecrated a priest there in Sweden. But during his lifetime, very little was accomplished. And one of the great things we can remember about Anskar, besides his tireless and dedicated work of missionary and evangelism within the Scandinavian countries, is the fact that in answering the call to serve, he did not get to see the fruits of that labor. But 3 generations later, about a century after Anskar died, with the Vikings now even more on the warpath, the Frankish church, or the French church, really losing its influence to the growing influence of the Pope in Rome, and the need that some of the Scandinavian countries were seeing to find something to unite them against, believe it or not all of the Scandinavians were Vikings, against the Vikings who were opposing their rule, was Christianity. And even though Anskar was long since dead, Anskar is still today, particularly in Denmark, regarded as the father of Christianity in those Scandinavian countries. So, a man whose work was very tedious, very hard, and yet because he sowed it in faith, he was able to allow others beyond him and several generations after to reap the harvest of what he had faithfully served. So thank you for joining me as we take a look at this little known, at least to us, but very important saint in the life of the church and in expanding the witness of the gospel to new frontiers. Tomorrow we will take a look at a couple of notable American saints that you may not regard as saints, but they are people whose contributions to the life of the colonial American church were very profound. That is Roger Williams and Ann Hutchinson. Join me tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you then. Take care.